But if it's just me by myself out in the wild, it's a mess. Hi everybody, I'm so excited that you're here today. Thank you for joining me. This is actually Amanda, a woman living life at the intersection of autism, scoliosis, homeschooling, and real estate. If this is your first time here today, welcome. I'm so excited. And if you are a returning viewer, I really appreciate it. I'm glad to have you back, and I hope that you enjoyed the video that I have for you guys today. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about categorizing my autistic traits into the DSM Diagnostic Criteria. So the 5th edition of the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, also known as the DSM-5, provides standardized criteria to help clinicians diagnose ASD. So before we go any further today, I do want to point out that I'm not a clinician or a therapist of any kind. I cannot diagnose or treat anything. I'm just a homeschooling mom with autism. I work in real estate, and which is about as far as you can possibly get from any kind of clinical setting. So please don't take anything in this video, or if I'm being honest with you, anything that you see on YouTube as medical advice. You need to go and see a psychologist or a therapist or a clinician of some sort in order to have this diagnostic criteria used against your specific traits to determine whether or not you have autism. I can't do that for you. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be going through all 5 of the criteria for an autism diagnosis, and I'll be sharing my own experiences and traits that my doctor used for my late diagnosis at 36 and a half years old. Okay, so first, A, persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts. Diagnosis requires person meets all 3 of the following criteria. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to go through each of the criteria and then share my experience. So basically I took this big giant 8-page list that I wrote of all of my autistic traits and experiences and categorized them into this diagnostic criteria. So number 1, it says deficit in social emotional reciprocity. Difficulty initiating or sustaining back and forth conversation, tendency to monologue without attending to listener cues. What are we doing right now? Unusual responses to greetings or other social conventions. So here's my experiences. In a large social gathering, like a party, I either behave in one of 2 ways. Either I will find myself attaching to one person. It's usually somebody who's maybe not an appropriate person for me to talk to, but I will kind of attach myself to that person and want to only talk to that person and kind of like really overshare and give that person my life story when I know that they're not interested, but it just is what it is. So that's one way that I interact in a large social gathering. Another way is by masking my way through it and kind of flitting around the event, not really engaging specifically in any particular group or in a particular conversation, but appearing like I might be to others anyways. And that's really my least favorite of the 2 ways that I respond in large social gatherings. And this is also without my safe person. If I'm with a safe person, I feel a lot better in a social situation, and I can kind of take cues from that person, like my husband. But if it's just me by myself out in the wild, it's a mess. I often don't know what's appropriate or not appropriate to bring up in social company. I overshare a lot, and I find myself having to share more than I maybe would have otherwise or wanted to, because I've started talking and I've opened my mouth, and now people are asking questions, and now I've got to keep talking and I keep saying things, and it's just kind of a never-ending circle until the conversation stops, and usually it's not me stopping it. I can over-explain topics. When I'm talking about a very easy point that I'm explaining, I have to explain it completely in the way that I want to, or it can really mess up the whole thing. It can mess up the whole story to me. I'm aware that I'm over-explaining, and I'm aware that other people were bored, but that doesn't stop it. It doesn't stop the over-explaining or the telling of whatever it is that I'm talking about. Okay, number 2, deficits in non-verbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction, lack of eye contact, difficulty understanding nonverbal communication, and unusual tone of voice or body language. So in my experience, making eye contact was something that was ingrained in me as a child. I thought back on it when I was trying to consider my childhood experiences with like through the lens of autism, and I can hear my mother demanding, look at me, during any of our many disagreements, because it happened often. And I do remember being able to maintain eye contact with her, but it was like my eyes locked onto her eyes, and then everything that was happening in my brain stopped. And I could maintain that eye contact with her, but I would stop arguing and I would stop forming sentences. I would basically like go mute. And this would further enrage my mom, and just because I'd stopped talking. And I remember, like being dismissed from a disagreement or an argument because I had stopped engaging. And then once I got alone, just having a fit or having a little meltdown, not a little meltdown, but a serious one, just, the moment that I got away from her. But I do think that eye contact, my issues with eye contact, some of them were kind of rooted in situations like that where I was forced to maintain it. I do struggle with eye contact in many areas of my days. When I'm focused on doing something and someone is in my way, or when I'm angry or frustrated, or when I'm tired or overstimulated, eye contact feels impossible for me. Even if someone's trying to get it, even if like my husband is like leaning over and like trying to get me to make eye contact, I won't do it. And it's not a choice that I'm making. It's just the way that my body is responding to whatever situation I'm in. In conversation, I find myself watching and copying eye contact. I can make eye contact, but I do notice that my eyes tend to like flit around someone's face. I'm looking at their mouth or under their eyes or above their eyes or in their eyes for a second, but then away. And I do wonder and worry about what people think about me if they do notice that. My eyes do drift around, and sometimes I find that I'm hyper-focusing on one eye instead of a balance between them both. Or I'll notice like my eyes switching back and forth from eye to eye. And I do prefer to wear sunglasses when it's appropriate. It feels really, really ridiculously good to me to hide my eyes. I love wearing my sunglasses because I don't have to worry about other people making direct eye contact with me. And it's less noticeable when I'm not meeting someone else's eyes. So if I'm wearing my sunglasses, you can't tell. If my face is pointed at you, you assume that I'm making eye contact with you. But if I have sunglasses on, I can almost guarantee you I'm not. It feels like a lovely little secret to me, and it gives me a stronger sense of safety and self when I'm in social situations. So when that's appropriate, I do prefer to do that. And then additionally, I do prefer wearing glasses over contacts. It kind of feels like my glasses provide like a layer of protection between me and the world, even though they don't hide my eyes as much as like sunglasses do. But wearing contacts makes me feel really exposed, like almost like people can see too much, which I know that sounds silly, but it's what I think. And then the last piece of the criteria that I wrote down here as part of my experience is that when I'm talking about something that's a special interest or that I'm excited about, I can be way too loud to the point of yelling when I'm in close proximity with someone else. And then when someone points it out, though, I get extremely embarrassed and I will often clam up. I really hate when this happens because like I'm just so excited to be sharing whatever it is that I'm talking about in that particular moment, but I make other people uncomfortable, and sometimes when they point it out, I don't know how to re-engage in the conversation appropriately. Like, I don't know, it doesn't feel safe to then turn around and just like start talking about something else or to just lower my volume. So that's a real struggle for me. Okay, the third piece of this first diagnostic criteria about persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction says deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. Challenges adapting behavior to match different social settings, such as when interacting with family, friends, authority figures, or strangers. Difficulty developing or sustaining friendships, and a greater than usual need for alone time. So my experience, I am quite often In my experience, I am quite often perceived by others to be rude or blunt People have told me that I've said something mean or that I was too blunt about something, and I'm never ever trying to be blunt or rude. Sometimes it's just how it comes out of my mouth, and I have inadvertently hurt people because of it. I often don't even know that it's happening until it's already happened or someone tells me. Back before I was married, I was very awkward in flirting and even everyday conversations with less familiar people, especially conversations that I haven't had the time to prep and prepare for. I have a very difficult time determining whether someone was actually flirting with me or really did like me. That I often was just like, woo, unaware, unless someone told me to my face. My behavior around people that I'm not close with feels performative. I catch myself mirroring and copying people that I'm talking to quite often. When I should be listening, I'm often thinking about my posture, where my hands should be, trying not to look awkward, where my eyesight is landing, where my eyes should be focused, etc. And I do need quite a bit of alone time to feel okay, and I can quickly get annoyed if someone is encroaching on my alone time. Some evenings I need to just shut myself away in my room for a few hours. Sometimes it's just to scroll on my phone. Sometimes it's just to lay down and be quiet. But it's always where I am decreasing sensory input. So I often will have the lights off, maybe a lamp or a candle lit, but the big light is for sure off. And generally have something with a hood. And my husband kind of jokes and knows that if my hood is up, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Okay, the second big piece of the diagnostic criteria, so we're on to B now, says restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. Diagnosis requires persons to meet at least 2 of the 4 criteria. I meet all 4 of them. Shocking, I know. Okay, number 1 is stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech. Repetitive movements or stimming, such as rocking, flapping, pacing, or spinning for enjoyment or as a coping mechanism. Arranging objects in a very precise manner, echolalia, continuously repeating sounds, words, or phrases. Okay, so my experience with this. I do a lot of hair twirling. I twirl my hair constantly when I'm alone, or I feel safe, like I'm home or driving my car with my husband. And I want to do it when I'm in social situations, but I don't. I want to have my hands in my hair all the time. I want to be fiddling with it and touching it, but I don't. The next one is biting or sucking on the inside of my mouth. This happens a lot during stressful or new situations. I did this so much when I was a brand new baby teacher and was learning how to teach, to the point that I had sores on the insides of my mouth. And it was hard to eat. So another piece of that is chewing on my tongue. A lot of people in my family do this, and it's kind of the way that you can tell that we're thinking or working on something. I do this often when I'm focused, and it is noticeable to other people, and I do try to stop myself when I catch myself doing it, and it is one of those things that I get embarrassed about when other people do point out. Fidgeting. I love fidgeting with things with my hands. Even before I knew that I was autistic, I would often have a little something in my hand. Right now, I'm working and playing this little anxiety ring on my finger. So anything like my little T-Rex 3D printed dinosaur guy, maybe a Lego man or a fidget cube, a poppet, my wedding rings that I can move up and down my finger, my car keys that pop open and close. Anything like that feels really good in my hands, I will often use to help regulate myself and get move nervous energy out. Internal stimming, having constant songs in my head or words when I've heard a show until I use those words. But generally, this is having a song stuck in my head. It can be a whole song, it can be a lyric, it can be a lick of music. But yeah, when it gets stuck, who knows how long it's going to be there for. Often I wake up with them. I will dream the sound and will wake up with it in my head. And as a child, I remember using my finger to spell out words that I was hearing on my leg or the surface of whatever I was seated on. This was never obvious to other people. I don't even know that other people that I was around as a child knew that I did this, or I didn't do it where other people could see it. I still do this as an adult, and I feel the like desire to do it, to like use my finger to spell things out, but I kind of resist it. I hated doing this behavior as a kid. I didn't understand why I did it, but I kind of stopped. I taught myself for the most part to kind of stop it. But I was in an uncomfortable social situation recently at someone's home, and I caught myself doing it. So just another little way that I stim that I don't think is super noticeable to other people, but I don't like that I do it. Okay, the second piece of the restricted repetitive patterns of behavior criterion say insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of behavior or nonverbal behavior. Of verbal or nonverbal behavior. Greater than expected degree of distress when changes in routines or expectations, difficulty transitioning between activities, need to do the same thing in the same way each time, and greater than usual reliance on rituals and accomplishing daily tasks. So my experience, without consciously choosing to do so, I create all kinds of routines and rituals throughout my day, often so I don't forget things. I do them in order almost every single time. So my morning routine, when I wake up, I check my phone, I open my curtains in my room, I use the bathroom, brush my teeth, splash my face, take my vitamins and supplements, which are all lined up in the order that I take them. And that's my morning routine. I can start my day once I've had those things done. I have a shower routine, and if I miss anything in the shower routine or do anything out of order, I have to go back and start again because I'm not sure what I missed. I don't know what I missed. So it's shampoo, conditioner, shave, wash my face, wash my body. If I skip a part or do it out of order, I get lost and I don't know what I've done or what I haven't done. I've washed or conditioned my hair twice while showering many times because I got lost in the routine somewhere and can't remember if I did it. That order is important. I can, however, make a conscious choice to skip a step. For instance, if I know that I'm not going to wash my hair that day, I'll make that decision, but then I do have to keep thinking about it while I go through the rest of the routine to remind myself, because I will, again, get lost and say like, oh, did I wash my hair? Oh, no, wait, I'm not washing my hair today. Okay, I can move forward. My evening routines, this one isn't always done in order because I live with a bunch of people. There are 4 other people in my house and 4 dogs in my house, so it's not always done in order, but I try. I finish the dishes and cleaning the kitchen. I always make sure my outside lights are on, my curtains are closed, the stair light and the outside lights are on. I light my candles. I get my ice packs for my back and my knees now also. I make sure my drinks are full and on my side table, and I really can't relax until all of these things are done. And it's very stressful to me if I'm late getting to this. Like usually I try to start this evening routine somewhere between like 5 and 7. In the event that I have a late event, like maybe we have a basketball game for the boys at like 7:30 and I'm not home until like 9, I can feel really like rushed and amped up about that because I'm late getting to my routine. And then another example of this that I thought of was eating the same food. I make myself a big pot of soup for lunch at home during the week. I make 1 or 2 soup recipes, or I have 1 or 2 soup recipes that I make over and over again. I make it the same way every time. I know the recipes like the back of my hand. I could probably do it asleep. It's consistent. I know what I like to eat. It's healthy, and I don't have to worry about what I'm going to eat for lunch every day. So the next thing is that I do also struggle with transitions. It's very easy for me to get locked into a specific activity, and then when it's time to switch gears, it can feel like nearly impossible, especially if I haven't finished what it is that I was working on. I wrote earlier today, right now, as I'm writing the script, I can feel hungry and I know that it's lunchtime, but I feel this overwhelming need to finish doing what I'm doing and writing what I'm writing before I allow myself to transition into eating some lunch. Additionally, it's really hard for me to engage in any activity when I know that I have something later on in the day. For example, if I have a doctor appointment at 3 in the afternoon, oh boy, I'm gonna waste most of the day in wait mode because I'm just gonna get stuck like waiting for that appointment. Okay, the third piece of this second diagnostic criteria says highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. Intense special interests, such as looking at spinning objects for hours, learning the detailed schedules of an entire public transportation system, or becoming an expert in 17th century art, while having some significant difficulty attending to topics outside of one's areas of special interest. So here, my special interests are things like atheism and religion, particular shows like Friends, Outlander, or Shameless. These are stories that I know well. I know them like the back of my hand, and I know what to expect. So it's easy to kind of like, it's like a massage for my brain. Like, just lets my brain rest a little bit because I know these characters, I know the story, and I know what they're going to do. Studying anthropology and evolution, writing, learning about psychology and trauma is a current special interest. And then my girl, Taylor Swift, and other musicians as well, but especially her. The fourth piece of this diagnostic criteria says hyper or hypoactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. Being hyper or hyposensitive to sounds, lights, smells, or textures, having an abnormally high or low pain threshold, difficulty processing more than one sense at a time, for example, not being able to understand spoken language while looking at someone's face, tendency to become confused or overwhelmed by sensory stimuli, challenges with body awareness or separating different types of sensations. So my experience, there are so many things that fall underneath this category. So for sight, certain things in my line of sight or my peripheral vision can really bother me. When I was a kid, I remember not being able to focus. Like, for example, if someone's dirty socks were in a pile on the floor over there and I could see them, I couldn't like focus on what I was doing. However, I also couldn't bring myself to get up and deal with the socks. Like touching the dirty socks, like it makes my teeth hurt right now. I couldn't do that. I would just notice and obsess about the fact that they're over there, but I wouldn't do anything to change it. Now, as an adult, I do have the capacity to change something that's in my environment that's bothering me visually, and I do set things up around myself to be visually pleasing by design, which is another reason why I prefer to be at home, because I'm more in control of my environment at home. All right, sounds. I'm very sensitive to sounds. Sounds can make me anxious or overwhelmed. I can hear the whirring and buzzing of appliances, of lights, of other animals and people around me. I cannot stand repetitive sounds. It doesn't even matter what the sound is, but especially like bad repetitive sounds, like the sound of my dog constantly licking. Like, I will freak out and yell at my dog because they won't stop licking. And it drives the people around me crazy because no one wants to hear me yell. Hearing. Sometimes I can physically hear what someone is saying. There's no ability or no issue with my ability to hear, but I have a difficult time actually decoding and understanding what they said. I do a lot of lip reading to support my hearing and comprehension, and I always watch TV with closed captions on. I have this struggle with hearing and light too. I like the lights to be dim in the evening, but I can struggle to listen well in that environment. And I tend to need to sit up and turn a lamp on or turn the lights up in order to have a big or an important conversation when it's too dark. Touch and textures. This is a big one. I don't like the way certain things feel. I hate socks, and I only wear them when I absolutely have to, or when it's very, very cold, or like when the shoes that I'm wearing require them. I like to touch things before I buy them, especially things that are going to like be on my body or like touch my body. So like blankets and sheets, I'm not buying those on Amazon. I need to go to the store and touch and feel them because odds are very good that I'm not going to like the way that it feels, and I need to search out what one feels good to me. Certain fabrics for sheets, pillowcases, blankets, towels, and clothing are unacceptable. I would rather avoid using that thing at all than force myself to use it for comfort. For example, if it's a blanket I don't like, I'd rather be cold than use it. I get easily touched out, and I don't want any more touch. This has gotten easier for me as my children have gotten older, but when they were young, I really, really, really struggled with this when they were babies. I strongly dislike massages because of the oil that's used on my skin. I've asked many times for different products to be used, but I always have the same feeling after. I love the massage, but afterwards my skin feels gross, and I want to shower immediately to get whatever it is they use off of my skin. And I don't do massages for that very reason, because while the massage itself is relaxing, the minute I have to put my clothes back on after the massage is over, I'm not relaxed anymore, and I'm actually very upset. Whew. Okay, The next one is light touch. I do not like light touch. So if I'm going to be touched, I like the pressure to be enough that I can feel it, but not too hard, as I'm very sensitive to deep pressure. A firm touch feels best for me when I want to be touched. And then taste and texture. Texture is a huge thing for me. I do prefer foods that I'm familiar with. I dislike events like potlucks because even if there's something there that I usually do eat, it could be prepared a different way, or maybe colder, a different temperature than I normally like it. And at restaurants, I order the same thing almost every time. It's a running joke with my husband because he knows what I'm going to order at every restaurant. I just have a real hard time like paying for something that I don't know for sure if I'm going to like. It's just really difficult for me to go outside of my comfort zone with food. I do it, but it's really difficult. Okay, the third piece of the diagnostic criteria, C, says symptoms must be present in the early developmental period, but may not become fully manifest until social demands exceed limited capacities or may be masked by learned strategies in later life. Though characteristics should have been present throughout one's lifetime, a change in circumstances can disrupt coping strategies and make characteristics more pronounced. Alternatively, environmental facilitators, supports, and coping strategies may make characteristics less noticeable. So my experience, I'm still doing a whole lot of digging and remembering here. I remember situations where things didn't make sense, or there would be a social thing that happened where I couldn't piece together afterwards what I had done wrong, but I knew that I had done something wrong. As a child, I struggled with imaginative play with others, with understanding concepts like religion and authority. And when I think back to the struggles that I had as a teen and a child, especially with my parents, my late diagnosis really allows me to give so much more compassion and grace to myself because no one knew. It was the late 80s and 90s. Like, no one knew that I was autistic. So, of course, they pushed me to conform. Of course, they pushed me to behave. Of course, they pushed me to meet societal expectations. And sometimes, a lot of the times, I just couldn't. The saving grace of that is that for 36 and a half years, I told myself that I was a bad kid. I told myself that I was the black sheep in my family. And that's not the case at all. It's just not the case at all. I was the autistic kid in my family. I was the firstborn. I was supposed to be all of these things, I was supposed to meet all of these high expectations, and sometimes I could, and other times I just couldn't, and I was punished when I couldn't. But that doesn't make me bad. It doesn't make me the black sheep. It just makes me autistic. So I can now genuinely look back with this diagnosis on my life and notice things that I remember where I can say, oh man, I really wish I could go back and give little Amanda whatever it is that she needed in that moment that she wasn't getting, and just offer myself that compassion. All right, the next piece of the criteria says D, symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in social, occupational, and other important aspects of current functioning. Characteristics lead to difficulty obtaining or sustaining employment, doing basic or instrumental activities of daily living, maintaining social life, or integrating with community. For example, there may be significant mismatch between educational attainment and occupational history. Okay, my experience. Story time! Here we go. When we moved from Florida in September of 2020, we had to live with family for 9 months. That house was and is very dysregulating to me, although that's not at all language that I had for myself at the time. The lights are horrific. It's either way too dim in there or the overhead lights are on and it's way too bright. There's no middle ground in that house. It's either too dark or too bright. There's not a comfortable lighting setting. I felt like the people that I was living with pointed out everything that I did, and I felt highly scrutinized on a daily basis. I absolutely hated it. The texture of the couch didn't feel right to me. The high ceiling in the bedroom that we slept in bothered me. The house was constantly dirty, no matter how hard I worked to keep spaces clean. Bugs got inside every night, and anytime my husband and I brought something up that we would like to see addressed, family members would react in such an over-the-top way emotionally that made me really uncomfortable. There's too much furniture, making rooms feel very tight and cramped, and you have to like squeeze through areas or like wait for somebody to move out of an area so you can get through, which is awful. By the end of October of that year, after 2 months, I was really feeling the stress of this long-term pressure. And then by winter, I was struggling with normal things that I don't ever miss. I was dropping balls that I don't drop. I literally didn't want to do anything besides sleep. I would get up in the morning and work through my kids' school stuff with them, and then have lunch and want to go back to bed and want to stay in bed. I couldn't most days, and I did force myself to go out and like see my grandmother and things like that because I knew that that was important. But I knew by the beginning of 2021 that the way that I was feeling wasn't right or normal. So I went to my doctor and they put me on Wellbutrin, and it did help. And spring came, and then we bought our own house in May of 2021. So it took me some time, but I was able to heal through that experience once I was back in my own environment and in my own space, and I could control the things around me, and I could set boundaries with who I'm around and who gets access to me again. But it did take some time. I was, of course, very excited to buy our house and be where we are today, but it took some processing and it took some work to get through the trauma of that experience for me as an autistic person. All right, and here's another example of how my autism manifests itself in my day-to-day life. I experienced an autistic meltdown after playing the Queen at a local community theater program. I was asked to perform when my youngest son was in the play already, and I agreed because I was there with him anyways, going to practices and things, and I enjoyed theater in high school, and I really wanted to have this experience with my son. So I said yes. But what I did in high school was never nearly as big as what I did for this particular play. It was very outside of my comfort zone, and the director's behavior and personality were really, really triggering to me. The show, once we got ready to perform, it was absolutely not ready, but we went on stage that Friday night, and after one show on Friday night and 2 shows on Saturday, I was completely wiped, completely exhausted, and in so much pain. My back was killing me, and I was just overall feeling very dysregulated. I'd had too many people and too much light and too much performing, too much everything that day, and I just wanted to be home and quiet and in my space. But when I got home around 9:30 that night, there was company at my house that I wasn't expecting. My husband hadn't told me that they were there, so I couldn't prepare myself, nor had any of the chores been done to get the house ready for bed. I hadn't asked anybody to. It's usually part of my evening routine, but just the simple fact that I was late, I was behind on my routine, and the sink was full of dishes, and my husband was telling me I just need to sit and relax and calm down. It just sent me into a full-blown meltdown. I remember my chest heaving with these deep, huge, rapid breaths, and I felt like my blood was going to boil outside of my body and erupt from my body. I yelled at my husband about needing all of these things done before I even could think about sitting down and relax, in front of our kids and in front of the company that was over, something that I really hated to do. I had no control over it, but I really hate losing control in front of other people. And then the company left rather quickly after that, because wouldn't you? And I took myself up to my room and removed myself from other people, and I cried for a while, and I worked on breathing and calming myself down, and then went to sleep and slept it off. But I can tell you, I felt like a real asshole for that. So yes, I would say that my symptoms do cause impairment in my ability to function. Okay, the last part of the diagnostic criteria, E, says these disturbances are not better explained by intellectual disability or global developmental delay. Intellectual disability and autism spectrum disorder frequently co-occur. To make comorbid diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder and intellectual disability, social communication should be below that expected for general developmental level. So my experience, obviously my social communication is not below that of general developmental level. I just have some problems, some issues socially. But my doctor asked about childhood and or current traumas. He asked about my ability to focus and pay attention. And he asked about my support system and who's around me daily, along with a battery of other questions. So my psychological assessment reads, Ms. Linton reports sensory sensitivities, literal thinking, difficulty with eye contact, being surprised when told she's been rude, masking, uncertainty over social norms, difficulty with light touch, problems in group settings, desire for routine, social avoidance, self-stimulatory behaviors, obsessive interests, and feeling overwhelmed emotionally. Her husband observes a strong desire for routine, poor vocal regulation, difficulty with phone calls with strangers, anxiety of disruptions in routine, bluntness, self-stimulatory behavior, and delayed emotional processing. So after testing, my responses suggested significant symptoms of autism. Results from the test are consistent with a diagnosis of Autism Spectrum Disorder. So that was something that I received on my 36th and a half birthday, just late last year in November of 2023. So it's only January of 2024 right now. I've been living with this information for almost 3 months now. So there you have it. You know, like I said earlier, being late diagnosed has come with some grief directed towards the experiences of my younger self, but also with just so much compassion for myself. Today, I'm able to take a little bit better care of myself, to notice when something is bothering me, or my environment needs to be changed, or maybe I need to stim and let some nervous energy out. You know, I know when I need to shake something off, and I let myself do it. That's the key part, right? Because I've experienced the desire and the need to do certain things my whole life, but I don't always give into it and let myself do that behavior because I don't think it's appropriate or acceptable at the time. And that's something that I'm working on kind of as a way of unmasking in situations where I feel comfortable to do so. And my home is for sure a place where I feel comfortable. So I'm doing a better job, I feel like, of taking care of myself than I have in the past. I'm very thankful for my diagnosis. It answered so many questions about my life, questions that I honestly didn't even know that I was asking until I started researching more about autism. And it gave me answers. It gave me answers. And it just makes me feel very validated. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the video today. And if you do, please consider giving this a like or subscribing to my channel so that I can continue making content for you. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments if any of this resonated with you about your diagnostic process or the places where your traits line up with the diagnostic criteria. So thank you again for being here with me. Until next time.